Welcome to Financial Clarity, the podcast dedicated to helping service-based small business owners achieve financial success. Join us as we demystify financial concepts, get practical tips from seasoned entrepreneurs, and discover strategies to increase profit and value. Hannah Smolinski here. I'm the host of the Financial Clarity podcast, where I connect successful entrepreneurs, financial experts, and leaders in the small business community. Today's episode is the third in a series around the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS. In the first part of the series, I interviewed Zach Kramer, an EOS implementer, where we covered the basics of EOS. And then in the second part, my COO and I discussed what it's been like implementing EOS in our fractional CFO company. Be sure to check out those episodes if either of those sound interesting and they kind of build up to this one. If you're not interested in EOS, well, maybe you should learn a little bit about it, because it is pretty game changing for a number of businesses that we have worked with and lots of people around us. But these episodes, you can find all of our episodes of Financial Clarity on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. This episode is brought to you by Clara CFO Group. Clara CFO is a fractional CFO agency dedicated to supporting growing B2B service companies. If you're looking to uplevel the financial strategy and leadership in your business, visit claracfo.com to learn more. So I'm welcoming back for part 2 of this interview, Laura Shiel. She is our COO here at Clara CFO Group and also a fractional CFO, where she helps clients with their financial strategy. Laura, thanks for continuing the conversation with me.
Yeah, I love EOS. So happy to talk about it all day.
Yay. And as we mentioned in our last episode, which would have posted a couple weeks ago, we are gearing up for actually tomorrow going into our quarterly our quarterly EOS meeting, which is fun because we don't live in the same city and we always try to get together and be in the same city for those. So we get to see each other in person too. So that's always a good excuse to spend some quality time together, which is good, and get some stuff done.
Yes.
Well, what I want to talk about today is that we work in this fractional CFO capacity with our clients. And that means that we are in leadership in one way or another. Sometimes we're a little bit more involved in the organization. Sometimes our involvement's a little bit less, like where the client may not have a quote unquote leadership team. And then sometimes our clients do have a leadership team. And some of those clients have implemented EOS. Laura, like, what has it been like for you? You've had a couple clients who've implemented EOS, and this CFO role is it's in leadership, but we don't have it's not like we have email addresses for our clients. We're not, necessarily, we're a consulting CFO. So it's not like we're sitting in at their office all the time or anything like that. So what has that been like? And maybe tell me the first time we had a client implement and how the CFO function sort of crossed over with EOS leadership team.
So I think that a CFO being a part of EOS and with a client that implements EOS really creates this integration to the rest of the leadership team and embeds us more into what's happening in the business day to day. So finance is prevalent throughout all activities that the business is doing. And I think that when we're not in an EOS, or our client doesn't have EOS, or we're not as involved, we meet with our business owners on a monthly basis, or every a couple months, or every 2 times a month. And we get updates from the business owner, but it's different than being in conversation with the leadership team, which naturally happens when we're attending weekly L10 meetings with the leadership team and the business owner, and then participating in even more strategic conversations quarterly. So I think that it just creates even this tighter connection that we have to the business and understand what's happening, because also sometimes there'll be a discussion happening in an L10 meeting that maybe isn't a finance topic, but a financial implication may come up. And so a CFO sitting in on those conversations can provide their point of view, and I provide my point of view in the L10 meetings, and insert myself as a member of the leadership team that will have a valid point of view, even if it maybe is about marketing or about day-to-day operations. There's always a financial implication of it. And so naturally having someone with a financial expert lens in those conversations, it just makes the discussion more robust, well-rounded, and getting to resolution faster. I love when clients have EOS and I'm a part of their process, because I think that they are just able to move faster, more successfully, and more confidently, because they've got all these voices in the room that can tackle the issues together and really come to a good solve for the problem.
Hmm. We before we even had any clients that were on EOS, like we had said internally that, and I had started doing this before even I had any other CFOs on the team. It was very apparent that if we didn't kind of know what was really happening in the business,
Mm-hmm.
from an operational perspective, that, we couldn't provide as good of advice to our clients. And,
Yeah.
you know, what isn't great is when your CFO, you might meet with your CFO like once a month, but all these decisions have been made during the month in, other rooms
Mm-hmm.
that, then we get the financial impact of, and we see it on the back end when we're looking at financials, but we were never maybe invited into the room to like help guide some of those decisions in the first place. So, not to say that everything needs to pass through the CFO per se, but it is nice to know the decisions that the business owner is making. And if they are having these like important meetings with other team members and they're making decisions, the CFO really, it's best case scenario for the CFO to know what's going on in those.
Yeah.
So, if it's not being communicated in one way or the other, like having the CFO actually sit in on those meetings is pretty game changing. And some businesses have those meetings, but they're not EOS
Mm-hmm.
meetings. Like they might have just a weekly leadership team meeting or a monthly leadership team meeting, and they talk about very, high level important things. But those, you know, the like us getting into the client's business is where we see the magic really happening with how we can be better advisors
Yes.
overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like awareness of what's going on in the business, but also having a CFO, the reason why you get a CFO is to have someone help you make strategic decisions.
Mhm.
And you need to be able, it's like a efficient way. They're like, you don't need the owner or whoever the leadership team member is to have a meeting and be like, oh, we need finances opinion on this before we finally decide. Then they have to reach out to the CFO separately, bring them up to speed on what's happening, get their input, and then come back and make a decision. Like all of that happens in the course of an L10 meeting. And so it's very efficient. We're talking about all of perspectives in the room together. And that's where I think that we really shine, is being able to be part of the decision, share our expertise and our recommendations, and then also connect the dots. So we're talking about something over here that may have a financial implication on something over here. We're just so much more aware of everything that the business is balancing it and working through, that we can help create some connection points and synergies, and make decisions that consider all of the implications across those things.
Mhm. And I mean, also that helps us like create a more accurate forecast if we're
Mhm.
updating and we're going to those regular meetings, and then we go and we have our financial review meeting and we're updating the forecast. We know that in the level 10 meeting last week that we discussed like saying yes to this, you know, $5,000 a month proposal that came
Mhm.
through, and we can make sure that that expense gets put into the forecast, and so that we can see those financial implications actually mapped out to what it actually will look like in the financials going forward.
Mhm.
Um, I'm curious about like how does that look for your responsibility when you show up to an L10? Are
Mhm.
you actually taking on, do you have numbers that you're reporting on, or do you take on responsibilities? Do you have to-dos that come out of those meetings? Tell me a little bit about your
Mhm.
role besides just be sitting in the room.
Yeah. So what I think a CFO can contribute to the meeting is portions of the scorecard. So maybe some of the more financial metrics like weekly revenue, or if we're tracking like labor costs or expenses, we have access to that data and can update those portions of the scorecard. Typically, I have rocks that are assigned to me that we set in the quarterly meetings. And so I'm reporting on how if those are on track or off track and working on those, throughout the quarter. And then, fully participating and listening in the IDS portion, and anything that comes out of that in terms of to-dos are all very like things that I work on and it's part of the system. And I think it's just like any other member of the leadership team. Like we don't consider ourselves differently. Like finance is a really important part and seat at the table. And so we fully participate in each part of the L10 and quarterly meetings too. In annual meetings, like we get to know and help set the strategic vision, which, in our Clara CFO process, we have the quarterly framework where one quarter is dedicated to vision. But I see so much more efficiency when a client is also doing EOS because I'm aware of what the vision is and we're talking about that on a quarterly basis. As for us to be successful as CFOs, we need to know where the business is headed long term. And that's all about what EOS is all about, is that long-term vision and working towards that. So that context you get into so much deeper when you're a CFO that's also doing part of the EOS process for clients.
I think another thing that is interesting about having an outsourced CFO be part of the internal leadership conversation is that they're bringing with them the experience that they have with all the other clients that they have. So obviously, we're not talking about those other clients, but we have experiences of working with so many different other clients to work through their challenges that when, we're presented with, a problem that's been identified, we might have a solution that the one business, they've only seen their problems and maybe, they've had previous employment experiences and whatnot, but they see their current set of problems, their current systems. And yet we come in with this other broader experience of oh, well, we've seen this other client tackle it this way, or have you considered this, or have you considered that? Because when you're consulting, you're in this fractional leadership position and you are consulting with multiple businesses, you bring that to the table as well. So I feel like that's one of the really valuable things for just having the fractional CFO on. But I think that, when you have the accountability charts in for your clients, are you considered, and this is just totally a question because I actually don't know, are you on the accountability chart, as head of finance? Is that where your seat is on the accountability chart?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a box with my name for finance, or overseeing even if the company maybe had engaged with us as the CFO and then they had an in-house accountant or something. Internally, the role might report into somebody else, but I'm still overseeing all of finance and have a really important oversight role for any internal financial related positions. But absolutely, I like having my name up there because we really are supporters of the business, a member of the leadership team, and the accountability chart should reflect that. The clients have hired us to really be that CFO, even though it's on a part-time basis. We are responsible and expected to always be thinking about the finances and the strategic side of what the business is making and the financial implications of that. So yeah, I do have my name on there.
Yeah. And I mean, usually there is some level of oversight to a bookkeeper or even being the liaison. I like to use that word between the bookkeeper and the CPA. And, if there's anybody else who maybe has a finance function, that the CFO can be kind of that head of the quote unquote accounting department. Even if your accounting department is fully outsourced, your CFO, your CPA, and your bookkeeper, kind of having one central point into the CFO role, and we can kind of oversee all of that. I think it's helpful. I think that oftentimes and let me know if you agree, the finance part and the accountability chart, it tends to be held by the CEO before they hire a CFO. Would you agree? Is that what you see most often?
Yeah. And that's not the right spot. I think, sometimes it's out of necessity if a CEO doesn't have the right partnership with a finance professional. But unless it's maybe a finance firm, typically the business is going to benefit so much from having an outside finance perspective, like a virtual CFO, that takes that off of the business owner's plate so that they can focus on running the business, encompassing that visionary seat, or maybe, if they choose to be the integrator, and really be into the day-to-day structure, depending on what personality or type that CEO wants. Managing finances shouldn't be on their plate because of how much other strategic thinking and work and oversight that the CEO needs to be responsible for as well. It spreads them too thin, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a difference between paying attention to everything that's happening in the business and knowing what the finances are doing and, being aware and, getting reports and knowing how to read those reports and versus like being the one that's, classifying transactions and trying to figure out a cash flow forecast and, doing all the things, having all of the conversations with the CPA and the bookkeeper and all the things like that can end up taking up a lot of time, and the CEO needs to be going and doing different things with their time. So
yeah, even like setting pricing or thinking about marketing efforts and how we make sure we're getting a return on marketing. I don't want a CEO in isolation trying to set prices by themselves. I think that like particularly that process and how important that is for overall achieving revenue and profit, like that process needs a finance professional to help them either set the guidelines on this is what pricing structures look like, or making sure that they're covering all of their expenses with a nice profit at the end. There's so much that our role encompasses as being CFOs that it's too much for the CEO to manage all of that too.
You mentioned earlier that you in those quarterly meetings that you will handle rocks, like you will actually have some rocks, without being like too specific that it gives any client away. Could you give an example of a rock that you've owned in your CFO role?
Yeah. Let's see. What's a good one? Oh, one that I just wrapped up this last quarter was helping the business visualize themselves so within the vision and traction organizer, you have a 10-year goal, you have a 3-year goal, and then a 1-year set of goals. And so with this business, we had a 3-year goal that was actually 2 years out now that they had set the VTO the year before. And we were struggling in the day-to-day to really understand more specifically what that 3-year business or what that business looked like in 3 years, particularly with the revenue goal that they had set. And so my rock for the quarter was to bring the leadership team together through a series of meetings to really talk through both what the financial picture looked like at the end of the 3 years, but also what the business looked like, what products or what staffing, what was marketing look like, really kind of thinking about when you have a leadership team, each of those areas, what does that look like 3 years into the future? And so that was something that I held. We had monthly meetings where we came together, we looked at the financial picture, we talked about what does for that particular department look like in the 3 years, and then made adjustments to the financial P&L with kind of considering what that those changes may look like. And I really enjoyed that rock. And I think that all businesses would benefit from doing this more detailed visioning process where you really get into the nitty gritty of this is what the team is, this is what our marketing efforts look like. And then of course it really benefits us as CFOs to help them kind of bring all those things together. And does that financially make sense for us to be like that in 3 years from now? And then as we continue to work with the client, we can make sure that we're taking the steps necessary to achieve that 3-year picture. And I've done that a few times, not always with EOS clients, but really working through a future P&L based on a set of assumptions. It's nice to have a revenue goal, but what does the rest of the P&L look like? And how do we make sure that we stay profitable as we grow? And so I think that was a really successful rock, and that it brought up some conversations that the leadership team typically didn't have time to get into, but was important to check in. Like, is this 3-year goal still achievable? What we want possible in this short amount of time? And ultimately, we came to some really good conclusions and things to work on for the future.
I love that. Yeah. A future P&L is very powerful. Profit and loss statement. So we actually did that for ourselves when we set our 3 years, because of course, like we're like, well, let's see if what this is actually achievable.
Yes. We have to get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So we took our 3-year goal, backed into what would that mean our, year-over-year revenue growth would need to look like. How many CFOs does that mean that we have on our team? How many clients are we actually serving at that rate? What does the average income per client look like? So we did some math like that to kind of back into it to say, is it reasonable for us to have this projected profit margin that we put on our 3-year goal? And that really helped us kind of set some guidelines to, where do we need salaries to be, and how much revenue do we need to have coming into clients? Like, we've set some really good, targets that have allowed us to say, well, no to things when we're like, well, if we're going to achieve that future state, we have to say no to X, Y, or Z. So, that's how we operate. And then we can help the clients do that as well. So those future P&Ls are gold.
Yeah. I think it's really easy to put a number in, what you want for 3 years from now in revenue. But when it comes down to it, is that feasible to do? And what are the big drivers to make sure you achieve that revenue and do it in a profitable way? And so it takes more of an exercise than just writing a number down in the BTO, but really kind of thinking through an exercise of, what does this look like across the board? And is this something I even want? Do I if I need revenue of X, I have to have a team of Y. Do I want to have a team that big? So there's some good questions that may come up through doing something like that.
Yeah. Or is there a way that we can leverage technology? Is there a way that we can, does that open up, do we need to be leaning into other things besides just increasing labor? So yeah, a lot of good conversations can come out of that. Okay. So Laura, do you think there's a certain point in the maturity of a business in their implementation process that it makes sense to bring the CFO in? Or can they start from the beginning? Should they have done it for a while before this all, before a CFO comes in? Do you have any thoughts on that? Is there any guidelines?
Yeah, I think as soon as possible. So if a business is thinking about implementing EOS and they already have a CFO, I would recommend that they're brought in right from the beginning, particularly because, especially with our team, we are familiar with the process already. And there's definitely a learning curve when it comes to all of the leadership team members adopting a whole new kind of way of coming together and working on strategic initiatives within a business. And it can take some time for people to get used to the meeting cadence, how you do IDS. And so we've had that experience. We've seen it done with other businesses. We've done it ourselves. And so I think bringing in someone from the beginning that understands how the process works helps the rest of the team get there faster, to where you're really fully implemented, efficient, making a lot of headway and moving things forward quickly. Now, that may not always be the case. Maybe you're already doing EOS and then you hire a fractional CFO. And still that would bringing them on as soon as possible, because of what we've talked about, where, us being aware of what the vision is, helping to set the vision, helping to work through issues. There's no reason to delay that. The benefits you'll see for your business from just having that finance expert in the room is just going to make the whole process even more robust and successful.
Yeah, I think it would be, feel like maybe we've run into this before where a client may be implementing EOS, but the CFO has not really been brought in to
Mhm.
those meetings. And it does kind of hamstring us in some ways, where we don't get the information that we need. And then we're asking things or maybe wanting to know things that would have been easily covered if we had been, in the room, when
Mhm.
those conversations are happening. So I think this is kind of, it goes a little bit to the mindset of who you're hiring or, as a business owner, when you're hiring a contractor, you know, are you hiring them with the mindset that they're going to be part of the team in, helping you improve your business, or are you hiring them for a task?
Mhm.
For, kind of check it off the list or just to say that you have a CFO or whatever it might be. And so, like, we're trying to align ourselves with businesses that are really wanting that, that valuable team member to come in and to be able to, support the business to reach their goals.
Mhm.
I mean, we thrive. We feel so good when we are, operating in that way. And when we're working with a client where, we're kind of more maybe just kind of checking off some boxes for them. We know that we're not being used to our highest and best use. So I think that this is like that kind of natural way that we can really come in and be of the greatest value to the client.
Absolutely. We're able to provide so much more value just from, being in the day to day and helping to make decisions, and provide that awareness and kind of best practice that we see across all of our clients. Like that's the ideal situation. And I'd question if that feels uncomfortable to have your CFO in the room like that. Is it maybe not the right fit? Or is it maybe you don't need a CFO, you need some other kind of finance, like just a more basic bookkeeper or something, if you're not willing
Mhm.
to, you know, lean on that role to help you move the business forward.
Yeah, like if you're you maybe or you're looking for a controller, like
Yeah.
somebody to make sure that all your finances are correct, a bookkeeper potentially, or maybe you want to engage with a tax CPA to do some tax planning for you, like on occasion, like so it is a lot about like understanding the role of really what the CFO should be bringing strategy and they should be helping lead in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, if you're not wanting to let the CFO into that room, then I think that's a great point. Like maybe it's not a CFO you need right now. So
Yeah.
I like that. Because that might indicate that the CEO or the COO, sometimes it could be either one,
Mhm.
still wants to be wearing that, that finance hat, and they don't want the input of, another professional in the room. So, which is, fine. It's good to know that. And so
Mhm.
that's, what we try to cover in a discovery call when we are, vetting new clients is, really trying to get a sense for like what they really want help with and what they really need. And we can point them in the right direction. If it's not us, we can say, hey, I think you're really looking for a controller in this situation, or I think you just need a really great bookkeeper and you don't have one right now,
Mhm.
so we can point people in that direction. So, um, if anybody is listening to this and they want to, learn more about bringing a CFO onto the team, you can definitely go to our CFO services page on our website, claracfo.com, and click on CFO services, and you can book a discovery call with me, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. Um, but Laura, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I think this has been really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so fun. And I hope everyone out there that's listening to this just, you know, gets a sense for how much EOS can impact your business and having a CFO that's also part of EOS. So um, it's exciting. And I want more folks to experience like the value that brings to their growth goals.
Yeah. Operations and finance are inherently tied together. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of why we love it so much. We love the EOS structure because it really helps streamline operations and really knowing what to do. And then that affects everything in your finances. So we like to think about those things together. And so, really great to have this conversation today. All right, Laura,
Anna.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Financial Clarity Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes to learn more about today's episode and click subscribe on your favorite podcast app.